This is going to be significantly more technical than the much more esoteric things we normally discuss on the channel, but I found this to be incredibly very interesting. Okay, I know that was a grammatical disaster, but when we're talking about hormonal imbalances in the body, there's very, very technical stuff that can be going on as well, and this kind of breaks it down rather nicely. And then understanding how to properly modulate hormones within your body. It's a very delicate situation. It's a very, very tough thing to do, but understanding the disruptors that are in your body or how they can become ingested in your body and what they do if they do in fact enter your body. How do you combat that? Okay. How do you assess what you need to change in your body so that it'll eventually work themselves out? I think that those are useful tools that everybody could do with having. So here are the 12 worst endocrine disruptors in your body. Endocrine disruptors are scary. Thanks. Cut to the chase. These synthetic chemicals are absorbed into your body and either mimic or block hormones and disrupt the body's normal function. Okay. Unfortunately, endocrine disruptors are in many products, as the Environmental Working Groups, the EWG, interesting dirty dozen list of endocrine disruptors reveals. The list includes the worst endocrine disruptors. Since these 12 are so scary and pervasive, the following is an overview of what each one is and how to avoid exposure. This one you have most certainly heard about, normally very popular, back in, around the turn of the century, turn of the millennium, exact same thing, actually. Right around the 2000s, it's like everybody started to ban BPA. I was like, why are you banning BPA? Because it messes with your hormonal balance in your body and it totally disrupts homeostasis. BPA, which stands for bisphenol A, tops the list. It is used to make polycarbonate plastics, including plastic dinnerware and some toys. BPA's epoxy resin is used to line food cans. Used to be. Not so much anymore, at least in the developed world. It has been linked to breast and other types of cancer, shown to affect the reproductive system of laboratory animals. The CDC, a study, the good side of the CDC, they're not all corrupt, just most of them. A study of 2,517 participants aged 6 years and older found the BPA in the urine of almost all of the people it tested. It permeates everything, okay? They're starting to wind it down a lot, but it sticks around for a minute. The best way to avoid BPA exposure is to swap canned foods for fresh ones, or frozen ones even, because if you don't think that you can get through all of the vegetables that you would like to eat, but, like a big old head of broccoli, or even just fresh peas, as delicious as they are, most of the time a frozen alternative is not that bad, okay? Because they are flash frozen at the point that they are picked straight off the vine, and you don't lose a lot of nutritional content. So frozen foods, if you want to have an alternative to the fresh, because you cannot consume them before they end up rotting or getting spoiled, always look for the frozen option. Dioxins, what are these guys? They are a class of chemical contaminants formed during combustion process, such as waste incineration or other industrial processes, including paper pulp bleaching. Here in Grand Prairie, we have three major pulp and paper mills within the area. Canfor is in fact directly in the middle of the city, just south of town, barely. You got two other big places as well, so this is something that could be in the air and it could be in the water if they aren't doing their proper job over at the wastewater treatment facilities. Just saying. People are mainly exposed to dioxins through eating contaminated food and through feminine hygiene products. No problems. I'm alright. Dioxins have been found to cause reproductive and developmental problems, interfere with hormones, and damage the immune system. Pay attention. That's very important. People have a background exposure to dioxins when there are certain levels of them in the body. The food found to be contaminated the most with dioxins include meat, milk, eggs, butter, and fish. So don't be eating tainted animal products. Know where your animals are raised, how they are fed, to avoid exposure to dioxins. Okay, grass-fed, preferably from a local source, that are not just factory farmed. That's just good advice in general. Atrazine, I know I've heard of this one, is a herbicide used in the United States. Is mainly used on corn, sorghum, and sugarcane. It applies most heavily in the Midwest. The best way to avoid atrazine exposure is to buy organic products and to get a drinking water filter. Yes. Atrazine was found in 80% of drinking water samples taken from 153 public water systems. All of the 20 watershed sampled in 2007 and 2008 contained atrazine. 16 of the watershed samples had average concentrations higher than the levels shown to harm plant and wildlife. That's not good. Phthalates. It sounds like a really bad neighbor, like old Phil Flatholate over there. God, he just lets those dogs bark in his backyard all damn day long. Are a group of chemicals used to make plastics more flexible. Man, a lot of this stuff is all around plastic food storage, plastic containers. It's almost like you shouldn't be eating out of a box or a bag. Just gonna go ahead and throw that out there again. They all used in all sorts of products, including vinyl flooring. Stop licking the floors. Okay, adhesives. Stop eating glue. Plastic clothes, raincoats. Really? Oh, okay, that's weird. Garden hoses. Keep them on a reel, and a joke for another channel. Inflatable toys and some personal care products. Yeah, I can think of another one. Soaps, shampoos, hairsprays, and nail polishes. Some studies show that phthalates cause gender confusion in children exposed to them. Interesting. Very interesting. Great way to avoid phthalates exposure is to avoid plastic food containers. Yep. Another way to avoid exposure is to read labels and look for fragrance listed on ingredients. Most fragrances contain phthalates. Interesting. Very interesting. Perchlorate. Perchlorate is both naturally occurring and a man-made chemical used to make rocket fuel. Something that the Ultimate Warrior was very, very aware of. Hulk Hogan. Fireworks, flares, and explosives. So concentrations of that is very high around July 4th. The EPA acknowledges that it may have adverse health effects because studies indicate that it can disrupt the thyroid's ability to produce hormones needed for normal growth and development. Basically, the best way to mitigate any sort of perchlorate exposure is to try to watch fireworks from afar. Stay away from explosives. But that's not very fun now, is it? Fire retardants. Oh, darn. Literally. Studies have linked these chemicals to lower IQ. Fire retardants, lower IQ. Okay. There are several ways to avoid exposure, including using a vacuum cleaner with a HEPA filter and being careful to replace the old carpet because they are persistent, accumulative, and toxic to both humans and the environment. Lead. I think everybody knows about the dangers of lead, but just for posterity's sake, another way to reduce exposure is through eating a healthy diet because studies show that children who eat healthier absorb less lead. Yes, trace elements of lead are around everywhere, and if you don't pay attention to what little Timmy's doing in the kindergarten classroom, he could still be licking the walls, and don't allow that to happen. Arsenic. Stop eating your apple seeds, okay? You guys have all heard that old wives' tale. When you think of arsenic, you probably think likely of somebody murdered by poisoning. However, arsenic can be found in some drinking water samples. Boy, it's amazing how corrupt and how contaminated regular drinking water is. It's almost like somebody famous out there is constantly railing on the public distribution of water and the toxins that can be found in it. Just saying. It can cause skin, bladder, and lung cancer. The best way to reduce exposure is to using a water filter system. You don't say. Mercury. For the exact same reasons, WHO considers mercury one of the top 10 chemicals that major public health concerns. It's also in the air and ocean, mainly through burning coal. Just basically, they don't tell you, but mitigate your small fish intake. Because mercury finds its way into the water and then it ends up polluting the different nutrition sources for kelp and tuna. One of the more famous stories of mercury poisoning was what Tony Robbins, the motivational speaker and all-around world-based guy on certain popular topics in the world right now. He was eating a copious amount of tuna for the longest time and he was going through a rather incredible health journey. This was a long time ago, but it turned out that yes, he was indeed being mercury poisoned by his diet. So presents as cancer-like symptoms, so just be aware of that if you're eating tuna sandwiches, but instead of just, having 2 loaves of bread and then just a little bit of spread of tuna in the middle, it's just a tuna loaf, little bit of mustard in the middle. God, that sounds awful. PFCs, perfluorinated chemicals. Yes, sir. We used to be very prevalent on old non-stick cookware. The EPA is concerned about the PFCs because they are found all over the world in the environment, wildlife, and people. They have found to be toxic to laboratory animals and wildlife. Exposures to PFCs is widespread. Ditching non-stick pans and avoiding water, and stain-resistant clothing. Furniture or carpets is the best way to avoid exposure. And they have been found to be toxic to laboratory animals and wildlife. Exposures to PFCs are widespread. Organophosphate pesticides, number 11. Whoosh! Organophosphate pesticides affect the nervous system by disrupting the enzymes and regulates the neurotransmitters acetylcholine. The Pesticide Action Network is particularly concerned about them, as a number of fruits and vegetables are contaminated with those toxic pesticides. Buying organic produce is the best way to avoid exposure. Glycol ethers. I know I've heard of these ones before. Let's just do a little refresher course. Glycol ethers are the number of household products, including cleaning products, liquid soaps, that would be why, and cosmetics. Yes. Animal studies have found reproductive and developmental effects from inhalation and oral exposures to glycol ethers. You can avoid exposure by reading labels and looking for ingredients such as 2-butyl oxyethanol and methoxydiglycol. Yes, a lot of cheap dollar store pump soap, if they're loaded up with EGBEs or DEGMEs, paraffins. You always want to take and note what is in things that are claiming to make you cleaner, but at the end of the day are just going to make you sicker. And especially with everybody saying now, even more so than ever, even though they should have been just standard practice, wash your hands, continue to wash your hands, always wash your hands, and when in doubt, just drink some additional hand sanitizer. More likely than not, you're going to end up building quite an exposure base to a lot of these different things if you get neurotic about it. But with a little bit of label reading, with a little bit of due diligence, you can keep yourself fairly safe. You can keep your hormones as much in balance as you can, and you can overall live a more healthy and complete life. I thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.